Hey everyone, Livy here, back with another video. This is Crescent Dreams Tarot, and today I'm doing a tarot tag that was created by the always wonderful Kelly Bear. And it is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 Tarot. So it includes 5 decks, 4 books, 3 spreads, 2 tarot habits or paraphernalia, and 1 piece of tarot advice or card that you want to embody. This tag, oh my goodness, this tag is blown up. Like, I don't think it's even been out a full week yet, or correct me if I'm wrong, by the time that this is getting out to all of you, it probably will be more than a week already. But this tag has not been out very long, and so many people have done it, and I was tagged by 2 people. So I was tagged by the always fun, always great, amazing Meg at Rose Honey Ritual, and I was also tagged by Sylvie at Tarot Magpie, who is also fantastic. Anyways, this tag, lot to cover. I'm going to try to clack my 2 brain cells together to do this. I am actually, at the time of me filming this, I'm very behind. There's actually a lot of tags and videos I'm trying to film, and I just don't feel like I have enough time to film them all. But I am trying to shove this one in and hopefully get this out to you guys as soon as possible. Also, my nails, as you can tell, they are all fucked. But listen, I have no, I have no patience to fix them. So you guys are just going to have to deal with how bad they look. Anyways, let's get right into it. 5 decks, and you could choose however you want to interpret this. I decided today, though, I noticed something very interesting. I'm going to go over 5 decks that I feel like embody me and my aesthetic the most. Let me try to visually show this first before I go into like each one. So I noticed, interestingly, when I think of decks where I'm like, oh, that's totally my kind of deck, it's like my vibe. I noticed that the ones that I would use for tarot specifically as examples kind of followed into a spectrum. So there's like this, kind of like this one in the middle here, and then these 2. And interestingly enough, they're kind of, I hesitate to say this because if you guys have been around my channel a while, you know I am non-binary, and so I don't usually like using language that is like either like feminine, masculine, etc. I prefer to be more in the middle, but I did notice that like I had 2 decks that I would say for me give off more quote quote masculine, but I say that very loosely vibes. A deck that's kind of in between for me, and then 2 that maybe you could argue are more feminine. I don't know. But all these, for some reason, are an aesthetic for me for different reasons. I'm going to start with the most obvious. Literally no one will be shocked by this. No one, literally no one. Y'all know what this is already if you've been on my channel a while. This is the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. I have edged mine to be that orange to match the backs. Or not the backs, sorry, the borders. This deck is an aesthetic for me. This deck is a vibe for me. This was my first tarot deck, and every single time, like this, how do I explain this? This deck is a very interesting space for me. I see it as like, how do I phrase this? This deck feels like it's both fiery and watery to me. Okay, which is also related to my tarot chart, which, by the way, I still need to do that tag. I've been trying to do the tag tarot my chart for me. Who was it? Niev was doing. I'm going to get to that one eventually. Anyways, not important right now. This is important. This deck is an aesthetic for me. It is that side of me that is kind of darker in some ways, but that side of me that's also very like fiery and watery at the same time. This is basically my Scorpio moon deck. That's like spoiler alert for that video. And this is just down to the colors and everything. This tarot deck is a vibe. This is one of mine, and my cat is like freaking out in the background. So if you hear her, sorry. But this is one of my tarot aesthetics, or general aesthetics anyways, like imagery that I'm attracted to, things and colors that I tend to like a lot. You know, Raven's Prophecy Tarot kind of covers that. So that's one of my vibes. Like if you had to meet me in person, this is definitely like my more emotional sphere of a deck. But interestingly enough, tied in with that, I also realized is this deck. This is newer for me, but this is the Lillifer Tarot. This is specifically the gold edition. I accidentally in my thumbnail put that it was the second edition, but nope, this is not a second edition. This is just the gold edition. This deck, man, this deck is a vibe though. This is a vibe for me in particular. Like, look at these, look at these backs. With the small accents of gold, this is me. This is also my more fiery side. This is the side of me that's more active or like unhinged. The side of me that like suffers from like, I don't know, my autistic executive dysfunction moments. I don't know how else to explain it, but there's like a part of my personality where this deck just is. And especially in the colors, because this deck does a lot of like different shades of red and blue and even the purples and stuff together. And that's just an aesthetic that I personally am always attracted to. Always. Like if I see those color combinations in anything, I either will want to put it on my clothing or put it on my walls or paint it with this, like especially these colors. Holy shit, like that's just they're just vibes. I don't know. This is some headspace that I have. Definitely like too for like I guess more of that shadowy side too, but also like the very active side of me, because this deck feels very, this is a fiery deck for me. It also, I don't know, it's both fiery and kind of airy at the same time, like with the white space, I guess. But the fiery side for me rules out more than the airy side. So, yeah, this deck is also 100% one of my aesthetics, vibes, things I'm attracted to. I love rainbows, so this is it. This is a deck that like kind of incorporates me, just me. No, not just me. I feel like others are attracted to this, but you know what I mean. Then a deck that's kind of in between the next portion. So I was showing two decks that are kind of more fiery or more fiery, watery or airy, you know, like showing different parts of my, I guess, tarot chart aesthetics. But I also have this side of me that's very, okay, this is more of like what other people have told me when they've met me or people at work and otherwise. There's also this side of me that's very quiet, that's very introspective, that goes very, I'll just admit it, like I can kind of go nonverbal, or I'm just like kind of listening and like observing what other people are saying or doing. And so that side of me is more attracted to like, yeah, certain aesthetics and color palettes, but it's more calm, and I would say more, or maybe not calm, but more like emotional, watery in some ways. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but the Tildwick Tarot, this deck has been one of my unicorns for a while. I was so glad and grateful when the 10th edition came, or not 10th edition, sorry, 10th anniversary edition came out. Why can I not talk today? Jesus Christ. Okay. Love the backs, love the gold, but the images are such an aesthetic. I don't know. These are like things where if I had to look for things to put in a house or imagery that I would just be attracted to and kind of like I linger on longer, things that are also just like academia, worldly, other vibes. This is the deck. This deck feels very personal. This deck feels like a vibe or like imagery and homeliness, I guess, that I am generally attracted to. Like when it comes to, let me say this, when it comes to like modern house aesthetics, for instance, I'm not so much a fan of modern house aesthetics. I'm more into, it doesn't have to be super traditional like this deck kind of feels like, but I do lean more towards the color schemes that you would see in this deck. So like, I prefer more natural wood tones, fun, funky wallpaper, or just, I don't know, this like almost earthliness. Like this is probably the most earthly, I guess I go. And just fun. I don't know, just fun. Wow, this deck like literally flew, or this card flew off. I mean, this is even a vibe. I really like the outdoors when I can just like walk through gardens and stuff. This is the more introspective, philosophical side to me. I feel like this deck shows us very well. And what's funny about this deck too is that what was I doing? Oh, I used this recently for that soul card or the soul reading. And I had a couple people comment and they were like, wow, I can't believe you're actually using this deck. They were like, I can't believe you're actually using this deck because there's so little to go off in the images. And I kind of had to pause there and think, what? Are we examining the same deck? I think there's hella things in this deck, you could say. Like maybe it's not the most, I don't know. Maybe it's just the way that my brain works. I'm like, yeah, I understand. I understand what this means right here. I get it. This is the Ace of Cups. Like this is, I don't know. This feels like the ace to me. So maybe this is like, oh, especially this library. My God, this is a vibe. This is my aesthetic for sure. Like this is what I want eventually one day. If I am ever rich enough to own like a house instead of living in a goddamn apartment, this is what I want. Bookcases like this, a nice like big desk. So this deck is basically just a vibe. This is a Tildwick again. And oh man, it's an aesthetic. It's an aesthetic. And I don't care what anyone says. This deck feels very open to me and it's easy for me to read. But I can see this is not a deck for everybody. A lot of people would struggle with this one. It doesn't give you a lot. For some, but for me it's very open and it is a vibe. So that's a Tildwick. That's deck, what is that? Deck number 3? Okay. 4. Funny that Kelly created this tag because this is actually a Kelly made bag. I don't know if she'll see this video, but this is one of hers. I bought it and it is so freaking cute, especially this little dangler, which I don't know if it's intentional or not, but this dangler reminded me so much of Sailor Moon. So I was like really, really attracted to that. Anyways, this little cute pouch of Kelly's that she made and I bought off Etsy houses my my edition of the Zerner Farber Tarot. This is the newest iteration of this deck. It has these fun metallic gold edgings. It's in a great size. I have smaller hands, so this deck, like literally, I can actually pick it up and hold it in just one hand. And this deck is just so, this is an aesthetic. This is a vibe for me. Like if people had to ask me what kind of colors and like interesting stuff I like having in my house or things that like I would be attracted to and maybe I would make art of, because this is mostly like an aesthetic of if I had to make my own art, I would be gravitating more towards things of this nature. Color schemes, different patterns, different vibes and energy. This deck is very watery too. I don't know. It just feels like a me deck. I don't know how else to explain it. This is an aesthetic though. I'm really attracted to like art that looks like this, color schemes that are like this, patterns and things. Ever since I've gotten this deck, I've just haven't been able to kind of like let it go. I'm still using it. I mean, this time I'm filming this, it's September, so this is actually one of my decks for the month, but I've just been really into this one, and I realize it's because this deck is my vibe. Like, this is my style. Like, if I could pick clothing and other things, more to wear. Like I would want like interesting fabrics or just color schemes and patterns that kind of fall in line with this. So yeah, this is another tarot deck that is kind of like one of my vibes. Like if someone had to ask me like what feels like a me deck, this is one of them, because and it just has the right balance. I don't know. I've seen other editions of this deck, like when it was, what was it, the Enchanted Tarot, when it was like super big and had like different colored borders. I've seen it when it's another kind of minier size. None of those kind of stacked the same way that this just feels like a vibe. I don't know. I don't know how else to explain that, but this is one of my vibes. So that is the Zerner Farber Tarot. This is the Schiffer Red Feather new version of this. But finally, as I wrap this a little bit, the last deck that I feel like is a me vibe. Like if someone had to ask me what kind of decks like hone into my aesthetic or who I am kind of as a person, this is the Guided Hand Tarot. Literally no one else should be surprised by this one either, because like the Raven's Prophecy Tarot, this is one of my decks. I'm very hesitant to say this, but at the same time, it's very true. This is also like kind of one of my soul decks, because its aesthetic is, again, this is also a vibe. Like the color schemes going on in this deck, I don't know. It's just me. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, even, again, this also ties back to like art I'm attracted to, vintage feel, but it's also collage, but it also just feels very personal. It feels like a very, I don't know how to explain it. This deck feels like a time in my life or my childhood, or a collection of images and things that made up like my youth too, because some of this feels, it's weird because this is a collage deck, but it feels very vintagey. I don't know how to explain that. And that's also a vibe because I like things that like look older. But this, like, especially this card, for some reason, this reminds me, every time I see this Page of Swords, it reminds me of my dad. This looks like very similar to how he used to dress in like the 70s and stuff. Of old pictures I've seen of him in the 70s. Let me clarify that. So this deck just has, I don't know, it pulls on old Americana feel from the generation before me, like my parents and my grandparents, but this also is vintage, but this also is like aesthetics I'm attracted to, or like things like patterns and colors and stuff that I've seen incorporated so many times, like especially this. I love this Empress, actually, by the way, and I'm obsessed with the color going on here. So in that way, this feels very much just like, if people had to bottle up my essence, this would be like probably it. It would come out this way if I had to do a collage style tarot. It just, I don't know. It's just very personal. It feels like me. It's very me. Basically, this is just to say this is a very me deck, but no one should be surprised at this point, because ever since I've gotten this deck, I've never been able to shut the fuck up. So the Guided Hand Tarot, that is the last deck I'm going to talk about. Let's move on now. Jesus, it's already been, I think, 18 minutes or so. 5 decks. We moved on from that. We're on to 4 books, and I am sticking to this. 4 books specifically tarot related that I have personally been enjoying. Okay, this doesn't mean I'm necessarily done with them, because as you're going to see, I've noticed something very interesting with tarot books. I don't read them the same way I would a fiction book. So if it was fiction, if, made up stories, whatever, I will read that book from beginning to end. What I've noticed I do with tarot books is that I kind of read them out of order, or even if I put a bookmark somewhere and I am kind of reading it chronologically, there'll be moments where I like skip through or go to different parts and all this kind of stuff. I don't know why. Maybe it's because a lot of these books, or some of these books that I've had, they go over every single card, which is fine if you're a beginner, but I don't really need that as much anymore. So I notice I tend to skip around. Anyways, let's start. First tarot related book that I really, really enjoy, and I actually do recommend for people, is Modern Tarot by Michelle T. I think it's just pronounced T. I'm not sure. It's spelled like T. Anyways, This book, I'm actually mostly done with this. See, I only have a little bit left. I'm actually mostly done with this book. And I do recommend this one because, especially if you're just starting to get into tarot and you are somebody who is hesitant to dive deep into the more esoteric parts of tarot, or, just not sure where you fall in with tarot, or even just trying to understand the cards and how they can be applicable to you in your life. This book does a great job of showing you real life examples of where these cards take place. So basically, as Michelle goes along, she talks about every single card, okay? And she gives, as you can see here with the Magician, she gives like these long pages talking about where the cards show up in her life. And in each part at the end too, she also does, it's kind of cool. It's either, I've noticed there's either like cooking recipes, spells, or like other stuff that you can do specifically with that card. So it gives you room to expand, which is really, really cool. And the reason why I also like this book is that she's very real about how these cards have interplayed in her life and when they've come up for her. Like when she actually got them in a reading, what was going on in her life at the time. And that's, I think, very valuable for people who are just starting off with tarot, because you need to see those connections between the things you're reading and the things that actually happen to you. Does that make sense? So for that reason, I highly recommend this one. I really like it personally. She might not be the vibe for everyone. She's had a very interesting life. Like she talks about like some of the things that've gone on with her, but I've just been finding it very entertaining. So, and I also like that it actually says can be used with any deck. So this is a great beginning resource when you're just starting to get into tarot. Another book though. You guys have seen this one. This is the complete book of tarot spreads, includes 122 layouts. It's funny that it calls it the complete. I wouldn't say it's necessarily complete, but this is a great tarot spread resource if you are someone who likes to use spreads. I specify that. If you like to use spreads, not everybody actually uses spreads and not everybody likes a structured spread. Sometimes people will just do spreads on the fly, and that's okay too. Like that's your vibe. I really like the idea of different spreads though, because I am someone who believes the more specific you are with your question, the more specific of an answer you will get from your tarot cards. And so for that reason, tarot spreads are the best way to get that. This is just a great small resource, especially if you're not sure how deep you want to dive into tarot spreads. I've done spreads in here that have been very helpful. You guys have even seen some of them on this channel. And I just think it's a good resource, especially if you want to read for other people. There are a lot of really good spreads in here, depending on the question of the person that wants the reading, right? So I really recommend this one for quick ones. This next book, oh my goodness, this next book. You guys have seen this one on my channel too. This is Archetypal Tarot by Mary Kay Greer. I have actually read all of this one. I just have like paper sticking out of here because these are my own personal notes. This book, oh my God. If you have not gone into this, I do recommend this. As it says on the cover here, it is what your birth cards reveals about your personality, your path, and your potential. This book is basically like the tarot version of astrology, because this goes into your own birth cards, right? It goes into cards related to you, whether they're not necessarily your birth cards, but they fall under the sphere of your birth cards. It also goes into how you can predict your card of the year for your specific year. Like literally, where is it? It's in my notes. This page. Depending on what your numbers add up as, right, you can figure out. Oh, these are my notes, by the way. Sorry. This is how I know what years I'm going to be going into for the rest of, also this paper. The years I'm going to be going into basically for the rest of my life. every year I'm able to predict it, right? So every single tarot card year, because we know there's like general tarot cards, right? That everyone has for a year, like the general, this is the year of blah, blah, so it's tied to this card. But this helps you figure out what cards specifically are tied to your years. So I cannot recommend this book enough. It goes into a lot of more detailed things, but I think it's very helpful to know what your birth cards are, because from there you can figure out patterns of your life. And it's almost kind of scary accurate how figuring out, is this the one? No, that's not the notes. It's almost scary accurate how what patterns this is just a brief thing, but what patterns my own life has followed. I've noticed things like I started in a wheel year. My life began in wheel years. So every time a wheel years happened, I've noticed some like really interesting shit was happening in my life. And I noticed that every time I had a death year, like my current year, really major things were happening there. So again, it's really helpful to notice patterns, just so that you can prepare yourself, a little better. So yeah, really recommend this one. And the last one I'm going to talk about is a book that I am enjoying, but I am obviously, as you're going to see, I'm not completely done. This is Tarot in Love. This is a kind of a newer book too. I don't think it came out that long ago. I'm only this far into it, so I've only read this much. But I like this one, especially if you are someone like me who didn't really know what to do with like more love aspects of tarot. Like if someone wants like a tarot reading from you and it's about like relationships, how would you interpret that? And this book does a really good job of outlining it. But as you can see here, what's it called? As you can see, this book follows a very formulaic pattern. So it goes over every single card. But as you can see, it picks out each card and explains it through in a love reading, a long-term partnership, intimacy, seeking romance, and your general desires. So it dives into each of those for each card. But then what's fascinating is that it also shows reversed meanings. So if you are someone who reads with reversals or look at the more shadowy sides of a card, you could see how it's applied to new relationships, long-term, intimacy, seeking romance, etc. It also has it for that. So it is really, really fun if you're into this kind of thing. But I'm enjoying it so far. I noticed, and there's even spreads in this one, by the way. They're like more in the back, but yeah. I've been really enjoying this one, but I notice that I can only read like a couple cards a time. Otherwise I get like really bored and then I have to stop. So that's what I mean by like kind of reading this out of order. But okay, yeah, that was four books. Now this next part is probably going to be my longest. Can you believe I've already been talking for so long, but this next part is going to be my longest. And you might be saying, why? Well, because number three spreads, I decided to interpret this part of the tag as 3 tarot spreads that I personally have created. Yes, I am actually sharing spreads that I have made. Now, I'm going to sorry, let me get myself together. I'm going to preface this by saying these spreads that I created were at a time when I was creating a lot of spreads, specifically because I was doing what many would call now shadow work. I was digging deeper into a lot of life things going on, and so I needed specific spreads for that, and at the time I didn't have those spreads. So take what I'm going to say with a grain of salt, or be careful if you are someone who, again, not sure if you'd want to do this work or not. I'm going to show the 3 spreads. I'm going to explain the 3 spreads. I'm going to use decks to show you how it would look. And yeah, you're going to see. So give me 1 second for the first spread. Okay, everyone. Hope it was just as soon as 1 second for you. The first spread that I'm showing for you today is a 7-card spread. I have entitled this spread the Insight spread. Insight. So for those of you who are fans of D&D, you'll know what that means when I say insight, is that this is specifically a spread when you are trying to understand somebody else. Okay? Seems simple. However, I would highly recommend that if you are somebody who has either a lot of anxiety or hyperfixates or gets paranoid, this is not the spread for you. Sorry, but it's not. And the reason why I say that is because you will get very interesting and accurate insights into the person that you decide to do the spread for. But that's not always a good thing if you are someone who gets anxious and then will use this information to try to attack or basically do shit you might regret. So use this with a grain of salt. I don't use this as much anymore, but there was a time when I was using this spread a lot. So let me explain the positioning here. Number 1 in this spread, oh, by the way, I'm using the little Prisma visions just to show you. Position number 1 is this one. This is the reason for wanting the insight. And this is also you in the situation. So this could be a lot of why you're trying to understand this person, right? Whoever the reading is about. It could be someone in your partnership. It could be a friend. It could be a parent. It could be anyone, okay? Could literally be anyone. This is not attached necessarily to being a love spread. So this is the reason for wanting the insight. Number 2 is how you think you are in relation to the person you are gaining insight on. This is how you view your partnership, your relationship otherwise, right? This is what you think it's going on. This doesn't mean it's necessarily what's going on. Because number 3 in this spread is what their relationship with this person is actually like. This is where you can get in trouble or have moments where you're just like, oh shit, because this is why I say take this spread with a grain of salt, because not everybody likes actually knowing how somebody feels about them, right? Or how your relationship dynamics are actually going, whether they are a family member, a friend, or, romantic, right? So yeah, this is a loaded card, but 1, 2, 3. 4 is them. This is them. This is their current emotional state. This is not tied to their feelings to you, because that's what number 5 is. Number 5 is their current feelings about you. 4 is just their emotional headspace. What's going on for them, general life-related stuff for them. This is how they feel about you. Okay. 4, 5. 6. The path they're currently taking because of their feelings towards you. So this is how they are deciding to act based on how they feel about you. This could be a lot of different things, okay? But that's number 6. And finally, number 7 here is the possible path that you can take because of this insight. So if you see these 2 things and even that and decide, okay, so this person, like say they're a friend and the spread is showing things about how they kind of want to distance themselves to you. This is just an example, by the way. Then card number 7 could be giving you advice about, okay, if they're being more distant to you, then maybe you need to also distance yourself a little bit or give them space. This could be so many different things, but I'm just saying that's what 7 is. It's a possible path that you can take. Now I say possible because again, nothing is ever absolute and you can decide to do whatever the fuck you want in a relation, right? You don't have to go along with this necessarily. So that is the insight spread. Again, this is for diving deep into people's feelings about you, but take this very carefully and with a grain of salt. So give me a second and I'm going to show you another spread that I have created. Okay, this next spread is a 10 card spread, and I have called it the King's Cross spread. This is kind of a variation on the Celtic Cross, but not exactly. And you might be wondering, why the hell did I name it King's Cross? I've never been to England. I've never been at King's Cross Station. I don't know. I think it's more of just like, I don't know. It just sounded like a fun name. Anyways, not important. This deck, by the way, for those who don't recognize it, this is the Everyday Witch Tarot. This is the mini version, just so you guys can see, kind of, see the full scope of what this spread is. And as you notice, a lot of these spreads are very big, so you need space to do these. I'm just showing you with mini decks just so it's more in frame. Okay, King's Cross. This spread is kind of a variation on the Celtic Cross, but this is also mainly a spread that I created specifically when you are at a crossroads between two different situations. I don't use this spread very often because these days, compared to my early 20s, I'm now at 30, but compared to my early 20s, I haven't had to choose between a lot of different decisions as much. But I was using this spread for a while, and I created it because I needed something to help me when I have a lot, like, you know, varying things I'm trying to sort through. So let's start it. Card number 1 is right here, and I've just called it the Significator piece. That is you in your present moment, okay? You can put your significator in here if you would like, especially if you know what your significator is, but it's not called the significator for you to necessarily do that. And I think your reading would be more accurate if you just saw it as this is your current significator. This is just what's going on for you right now, and this is showing who you are right now, okay? Hope that makes sense. And number 2 on top of it is, again, what is crossing you. Or so this could be what opposes or influences your current moment in time. See, it is kind of related to the Celtic Cross, right? It has that, it still has you and the cross, okay? Number 3 is right here. Number 3 is your past number 1. This is who you thought you were, right? Who you thought you were in relation to this right now, whatever the situation is, and what led up to it to now. This is who you thought you were. Number 3. Number 4, though, is who you actually were. This is how you were actually influenced by the things that are going on right now. And that's important to know because we can be very biased of ourselves, right? We can think one thing, but this is how we could actually have been, right? So very important to make that distinction for me personally, right? Because I like to know the truth. Maybe that's the very swords part of me, but yeah. So 3, 4, 5 is your solution. This is what will actually help you or could potentially help you, right? Very important to know that because number 6 is what could further hinder you. Now, this is not necessarily a judgment thing, but sometimes we can know what will help us and decide to do things that'll hinder us. And because of that, I've created positions 7 to 10 to show you what your potential choices, like how those could play out. If you are someone who really does follow your solution, right, what could help you out in this situation, then 7 right here is showing you who you could become or be if you follow number 5, okay? This is just a step in the right direction. And I say who you could, very, very specific, could, because as you know with tarot, nothing here is absolute. Nothing. None of this is absolute. You could decide, hey, I don't fucking like that decision and do something else completely different and it will change the outcome of your reading, okay? So that's why I'm very specific with my wording. 7 is who you could become if you follow your solution. But number 8 is who you could become if you decide to take the path that'll hinder you. And you might be saying, well, who the fuck would do that if they know that something can make things worse for them? Well, because sometimes who you could become might be better than who you would become if you follow the path of solution. I know that's a little tricky, but believe me, it's good to have the options shown to you, right? So many things that could be going on, okay? Number 9 in this is your external effect if you follow 5. 9 is related to 5. This is how others will perceive you based on the decision you make. This is not always important, but some people like to know this just in case, I don't know, they're going to end up too dickish depending on what their reading is about, right? Whereas the last one, number 10, is who you could become, who you could be, not necessarily you will be, right? Who you could become if you follow 6 instead. So if you take a path that might be harder, this is who you could be. So this is a King's Cross. And again, this is deeper stuff, but this is to really dive into different situations and how you could handle them accordingly. So yeah, let me get into the last spread, okay? Give me a second. Okay, everyone. This next spread is so fucking big that even using a mini deck, you cannot see all of it. So I will show the second half of what this looks like in a little bit. But this spread that you are seeing, or seeing partial of it, is actually a 13 card spread. And you might be thinking, what in the fuck? Like, why would you come up with that? And again, I was doing a lot of shadowy stuff when I was in my early 20s. And there was a lot of things I was trying to sift through and figure out. This spread is called the Winding Path spread. This spread's title is based on a poetic form that I also created. I'm not going to get into the poetic form now, but it is a poetic form that I created with the same title, okay, Winding Path. This spread is for introspection. This spread is specifically for you trying to really dive deep into the complexities of your past, your present, and what could be your future. This is for someone who's trying to do really deep introspective work. And with that being said, I would recommend taking this with a grain of salt. And if you are someone who is more sensitive to things like this is not going to be a spread for you. Just saying. But let's try to get into the spread because it is gigantic. And when I say gigantic, let me show you what I mean. This is what it would actually look like, but even this is very compressed. Okay? But we're going to start with the first bit of the spread that you can see. Number 1 right here again, you're noticing a pattern here. I like to do the crosses, but number 1 in this spread is you in the moment. This is the reason for your inquiry and why you're trying to dive deeper into a specific thing related to your past, present, and future. Okay? Number 1 is you. Number 2 is actually the first complication. Actually, no, sorry. Number 2 is past number 1 is how it began. This is your starting point. This is how everything else spiraled, right? This is your starting point on the path. You're walking this way. Okay, this is how it began. Number 3 is past number 2. This is the first complication that led to your situation, okay? First complication. Number 4 is past number 3. This is the second complication. Okay, and this is something else that was going on at that time to make your situation what it is now. So first, second. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, 5. Sorry, I even have to do this. And this 5 right here is past number 4. This is the turning point. This is the moment that led to your present, right? This is the exact thing that kind of made everything else what it's going on now. Okay, and if you're familiar with books and literary context, this is exactly the turning point. This is what I'm talking about. This is the moment where you could not return. Okay. Number 6 is this one. This is present number 1. This is actually the current situation. So this is everything that's kind of going on right now. This is in nuances. This is not you in the moment, like the reason for your inquiry. This is actually diving into what started all this shit more deeper, okay? Number 7 here is present number 2. This is your first complication in relation to this, right? You're going to notice the pattern here, but this is the first complication. Number 8 is the second complication, present number 3. And number 9 here is present number 4. This is complication number 3. So 1, 2, 3. These are the things that are complicating this. I know. This is what I mean by when I'm talking about this is the spread for deep diving, right? Diving deep into what the issue is. I feel like I should show a visual of these. Maybe I will to my community page. If you guys really want me to do that for the spreads, like to actually see the positions and the name meanings, comment down below. I will do that. Just tell me so that my scatterbrained self actually does it. Okay? I'm rushing through this one because it's kind of long, but these are literally just complication pieces. Now, I'm going to actually hold the camera so you guys can see the rest of this. I compress this. What you actually want to do is have it look like this. It needs to look like a winding path. See how it looks like a path as if you're winding through a trail? That's the point of the spread. It's supposed to look like that. But let's, except it's all kind of, I squashed it just so it's easier to see. Sorry, I'm moving them. This is the Monsoon Tarot, by the way, if I didn't say that. This is the mini version. Number 10 is future number 1. This is what could help you. Again, nothing is absolute, but this is what could help you. Number 10. Number 11 is future number 2. This is something to be wary of that's coming your way. This doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It just means you need to be cautious in dealing with it. This is number 11. Number 12 is future number 3. This is what could be next, but this is the most immediate. So this is something to expect very soon in relation to what's going on here, right? Very soon. And finally, number 13. Number 13 is future number 4. This is how it could ultimately end. Number 13, how it could ultimately end. But that doesn't mean it has to end this way. Because anything with this, as I've said, this is very situational. All these things are influenced by you and the choices that you make. If you make a choice to do something different than what the spread recommends, then of course your outcomes are going to be completely different, right? But this is a spread for when you really want to dive deep. And this is deep stuff. I realize this is deep stuff. Like, people are going to be like, damn, Livy, you're getting like really fucking dark today. But at the same time, that's a lot of what spreads I've done. Those are spreads I've created. And yeah, those are spreads I've created. And so, actually, I'm going to hold the Monsoon Tarot as I go into this next bit. Wow, that was really fucking long. I'm so sorry, guys. I thought this was going to be a quicker video, and it's fucking not. Number 2 is 2 tarot habits or tarot paraphernalia. I'm going to be honest, I don't really have that much stuff related to tarot paraphernalia, like extra things. So, 2 tarot habits I have is... Number 1, you guys have already seen this. I have a very particular way of shuffling the cards. I'm not going to show it all, but the big thing is when I do a tarot reading, before I even start, I knock on the deck 3 times. 3, 3, 3. I don't know why. I have to knock 3 times. I have to hold it to my chest, think about the question, rhyme the question. And then I have a very particular pattern of how I do the cards. And that pattern for the tarot habit is that I have to do it exactly as you saw. Then I have to cross it and slowly work my way in. And then I have to go down. So it's like a whole thing. That's one habit. I 100% have this habit. I always do this when I'm doing a tarot reading. It is not the same for Oracle, but I have a very particular way of how I shuffle the cards for myself if I'm getting down to business and being serious. So that's habit number 1. Habit number 2 with tarot is that I always shove a tarot deck into my bag wherever the fuck I go now. I used to only do that with books. I used to always shove a fiction book into my bag and leave the house because if I was bored out of my goddamn mind, I had to read something. I had to have a book to read. Okay, I've been doing that since I was a kid. But my new tarot habit is that I will take a tarot deck instead. I will literally shove a tarot deck into my bag and leave the house. Now, what's funny about that is when I leave the house with a tarot deck, it is always a small deck. It's never a big one. You won't see me taking my guided hand tarot out of the house now. You won't see me taking the Raven's Prophecy tarot out of the house now. I only grab little decks, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because they're more convenient, but they're not always the most practical for reading. They're just the easiest to take out of my house or my apartment, I should say. So I always do. Monsoon Tarot, as I'm shuffling, is actually the one I probably take the most out. But I also take tarot decks that are in tins out if they're not a mini size. So if they're not like the Monsoon Tarot here or the Llewellyn size minis like the Everyday Witch Tarot is for me, I will take this size. But this is the biggest I will go, and because it's in a tin, it's more secure, and I'm more likely to carry it in my bag. So yeah, I do take a deck with me everywhere. They just have to be small because I'm picky, I guess. Yeah. And anyways, this video is too fucking long. Let's get into the last bit here. Number 1 is a piece of tarot advice or a card to embody. And here's the thing. I was going to do the card I embody, but I noticed that the card I picked is kind of one that a lot of people who've done this tag, who've done the embodying thing, have talked about. So I don't want to copy it. I don't want to say I'm also considering that card. So my last bit of information, my unsolicited and solicited, because this is a question about giving out tarot advice, is when it comes to tarot, when it comes to buying decks, be picky. That's counterintuitive to a lot of people. And a lot of people on TarotTube wouldn't tell you to be picky. And I'm not judging, by the way, this is not to say I'm judging people who have a lot of decks, because I literally do not give a shit. You can have as many decks as you want. You can be a collector, and that's really cool. And that's okay too. That's also valid. But the reason why I recommend people to be picky with their tarot decks, especially if you are a beginner, you, the viewer, right now I'm pointing to you. If you are a beginner of tarot, I recommend being picky only because I think that tarot is a very personal experience, and it comes down to the little things. When you are going to read for yourself or for others, you want to have decks that reflect you. And the reason why I say that is because it is 100 times easier to read with a tarot deck that you understand than a tarot deck that you just bought because everybody else said, this deck is fantastic, buy this deck. No, don't fucking do that shit. If it's not a deck that actually calls out to you, a deck that's actually your aesthetic and the things that you like to touch and to feel when you are going to do a tarot reading, then it's not going to be right for you. You should be pickier. You should be saying, I don't like this deck. Therefore, I don't want to buy it. I don't have to buy it. Like, for instance, this Monsoon Tarot, this is not going to be a tarot deck for everybody. Okay? This deck has a very animated feel to it. It's very, it almost reminds me of Studio Ghibli aesthetics with like regular, like kind of anime feel. And this is not everybody's vibe. So not everybody is going to resonate with this deck and want this deck in their collection. And that's perfectly fine to me because this deck makes 100% sense to me. And it is a deck that I vibe with. But this is not for everybody. This is also in the linen finish. I love linen finish. Some people, when they're doing decks, buying decks, can be like, no, bitch, I fucking hate linen finish. You know what I mean? Some people don't like linen finish, and that's valid. Some people don't like rose petal. Some people don't like glossy cardstocks or matte cardstocks. Whatever the reason will be, it's okay to be picky and to hold grudges and just say, like, no, I don't want that deck because I know I wouldn't actually use it because of XYZ. That's perfectly valid, and you should do that because it'll just save you so much time, energy, even money, right? Tarot can be sometimes, I don't mind it, but tarot can sometimes be expensive for some, not as expensive for others, depending on whatever your life is going on. Oh, I guess the Lovers just wants to come out. Hello. It's a choice. Tarot is a choice. And it needs to feel personal to you. So my number one piece of tarot advice, sorry that was long-winded, is be picky. Only buy decks for yourself if this is a decision you want to make. It's okay if you want to be a collector too. I'm not judging you if you want to be a collector. But if you are new to tarot and you're starting out and you're not sure what decks you want to buy or what kind of decks you think are going to work for you, are you a Rider-Waite-Smith reader, a Thoth reader, a Tarot de Marseille, a combination of all of them, whatever. If you're not sure, be picky. Know what you like and be okay with that. And don't let anyone tell you you have to have specific things. That just bothers me. You don't. You can do whatever the fuck you want. And you could even, in that way, the advice I'm giving of being picky, you can also decide, no, bitch, I don't want to be picky. And that's okay too. But the reason why I recommend it is mainly for the people who are confused, who are uncertain, or want to be intentional with how they read tarot. If you want to be intentional, buying massively is not going to help you. It's okay if you want to, but it's not going to help you narrow down your focus in what you do and don't like. It's okay to take your time, basically, is what it is coming down to. To be picky and to take your time with what you like. My first tarot deck, as I've said multiple times, I feel like a broken record here, it was that Raven's Prophecy Tarot that I showed. That was my first tarot deck, and that was my only tarot deck for at least the first 2 to 3 years of me doing tarot. That was the only deck I owned. And I am perfectly fine with that. It's because I was picky that I did not settle and buy decks that every other person out there is buying. I know what my aesthetic is. I know what my style is. And I don't need every deck out there. I just need the decks that are right for me. And yeah, so that's my advice. If you are in the mood to be picky, be picky. It'll save you time. Anyways, I'm going to leave now. This video is way too fucking long. This is a great tag. Thank you, Kelly, for doing it. I got to share way too much. I was way too long-winded, but I hope you all enjoyed it despite that. Oh, God. Yeah, I'm going to leave now. So peace out, everybody. Bye, and I will see you again next time. Yeah.